Hello, we're the group 7 with Ryan, Tanner, and me, Elisha, and our SES is COVID-19. So to begin with our background, COVID is what is considered the novel severe acute respiratory syndrome, and it was first detected in Wuhan, China in 2019. And then by March 2020, the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic, and then it began to quickly spread across the globe and is then considered a public health crisis and still is considered a public health crisis and affects the global economy. For the historical profile, since COVID is a newer disease, there is not much history to it, so I compared it to previous epidemics. So throughout the course of epidemic, societies were forced to face sudden mortality, which left people questioning their social values. And in relation to COVID-19, society was pushed to explore common issues faced during a pandemic, which revolved around political, social, and individual aspects. And there are clear patterns throughout the history of pandemics. So COVID is just another aspect of the history. And from this, civil liberties were challenged, stress on society amplified already existing divisions, and pandemics forced people to focus on and question what is unknown. Here we have relevant stocks, flows, and feedbacks. And this is a diagram of all the stocks and just the directions that their flows lead them to. And we are focusing mostly on how COVID as a system in its entirety affects society. The stocks of the COVID disease are society, the economy, the environment, and the individual. Flows are where policy interventions lead each of the stocks. So flows are mostly stemming from policy intervention, which guides the different stocks. And policy intervention affects society, the economy, the environment, and us as individuals. So the feedback loops are where the impacts of these policy interventions among all stocks impact society. Here we have a diagram, just continuing on with the idea of feedback loops, and it takes into account different societal aspects, and it begins with COVID-19 being a health and socioeconomic impact. Then it goes to weak or weakening governance and national institutions, then increasing real and perceived societal vulnerabilities, then existing or increasing grievances, then increase incentives for social unrest and conflict. And all of this is connected. And so as one heightens in its impact, it might influence the next to also heighten in its impact. Then we have our limitations of the system. And as far as social factors, one limitation is the non-infected population. So for COVID, this means that the infected population remains low. So this is a limitation of COVID itself spreading, as well as immune population. So similar to non-infected population, people don't get COVID anymore, as we know so far. And then for economic factors, international trade restrictions, international trade decline, and business closures and unemployment rate all contribute to the less exposure of COVID, so there's less chance of it spreading. And then we have our environmental factor, which really is just solar UV rays, so it inhibits the spread of the disease. And then as far as individual factors, we have healthy nutrition, functioning immune system, and both of these contribute to a lower chance of getting infected, because if you have a better functioning immune system, then COVID has a lower chance of infecting you. And then for fear, this just means that as people fear COVID, their actions prevent them from doing the activities that might get them infected. And then for types and archetypes or traps, types of archetypes or traps. For archetypes, I just kind of gave a little definition. So it's patterns of behavior that provide insight into what drives the system. So from this, we know that the increase in numbers of COVID cases and COVID deaths both contribute to how we know the system currently flows, only because this is a newer type of disease and it's affecting us in a way that we might not know from previous experience how to adjust to it. These are behaviors that we know now that provide insight into what drives the system. And then for traps, this is the ways that the system can go wrong. So the way COVID as a disease can go wrong is if we begin vaccination mandates, which we have. This leads to people getting vaccinated, and it also leads to people causing more turmoil in society from anti-vaccine population. So I'll pass it on to Tanner for the assessment of the SES.
All right, so this slide is about stakeholders include patients, COVID-19 victims, pharmacists, physicians, healthcare professional organization, and the mental models are hospitals, overflow patients, local governments, cities, countries, opening and closing depending on the governors and mayors. Morgues increase the number of deaths, whether someone died with COVID or from COVID. And system drivers and distributions. Drivers are social interactions with unvaccinated people, anti-vaccinated population, air pollution, compromising immune systems, and distributions are the vaccinated population, social distancing, travel restrictions, face masks in public, solar UV radiation, critical thresholds or tipping points. Thresholds are the people that show symptoms is obvious they have COVID as we can track the cause of it and perhaps make changes to avoid it in the future. So this threshold is how come about ways of preventions that can lead to tipping points. There's 3 tipping points: face masks, social distancing, increased sanitation, and then more thresholds and tipping points. Tipping points are herd immunity, fully vaccinated population, and no one can no longer contract COVID-19. The system might go back to its original form. As more people become immune to COVID-19, we move closer to the tipping point of the system. We will eventually be in the stage of no mandates for mass or social distancing, as well as no travel restriction. Alternative religions there's 4: social gathering increase, anti-vaccination versus pro-vaccination, economic unemployment rate drops, individual increase in health care, and then the environment mass litter cleanup communities, more UV tools on the market for consumers. This is all post-COVID, and then pretty much after the tipping point. And then pass it off to Ryan.
Hi, I'll be focusing on the resiliency. First of all, just as a reminder from our book, resiliency has many definitions depending on the branch of engineering, ecology or system science doing the defining. For our purposes, the normal dictionary meaning will do the ability to bounce or spring back into shape, position, etc. after being pressed or stretched. That's from Meadows. With diseases, we can see how resilient they are by being able to spread, mutate, or even evolve into something more lethal. One of the most common examples among diseases and resiliency is cancer, because it can spread to different parts of the body as well as coming back after treatment, which is often seen a lot. In the case of COVID-19, the reason it has remained resilient for so long is that it has not been around long enough for people to have enough research to fully understand it. Another part of COVID-19 that's kept it resilient is that there are different variants that are exposing themselves now to humans. They put them into like 4 subgroupings, which are alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. The most common variants of the disease are 229E, NL63, OC43, and HKU1. These are all considered just alpha and beta variants of the disease. Some other common ones are MERS COVID, the SARS COVID, and then the SARS CoV-2. These are all considered the beta forms of the disease. COVID has remained resilient remains resilient when it is transmitted through person-to-person contact through respiratory droplets such as talking, sneezing, or coughing. Different levels of COVID are seen in different variants that develop in different countries and spread throughout the world. The adaptive capacity of COVID is seen in the different strains that are developing, even with the vaccines coming out. And then I have these 2 pictures. One of them says, talks about the new variant of the coronavirus. It says the new variant of the virus causes COVID-19. It has several mutations on its spike proteins. These spikes are used by the virus to attach to and infect cells. They also are what vaccines and antibodies drugs target. And then there's another picture which shows the 3 major variants of COVID and how they've started and spread throughout the world, just by showing where they've started and then where cases have been found. But yeah.
And these are our references. And that is the conclusion to our presentation.